Animals display a wide range of behaviors to avoid detection by other organisms, an ability called crypsis. For example, you might have been fooled by crypsis when looking at this photo of gravel. What appears to be the natural background of this photo is actually a well-hidden lizard camouflaging itself. Now, when predators search for prey who can display crypsis, the predators have to make a choice. Let's consider the example of this bird, who can make two choices. The bird can choose to either look for small worms or large worms. Small worms have 1/2 the energy content of large worms. However, there's a catch. There are also twigs which look very much like the large worms. So, when birds choose to look for large worms, they might risk only finding twigs. Now, that might be an issue. So the question becomes, should the bird invest its time in looking for large prey at the risk of only finding twigs? Or should the bird forego the large worms, focusing to ensure that it eats every small worm it can find? This is the basis of an experiment scientists conducted on the Great Tit. That's a bird, by the way. In this experiment, the birds were presented with 3 possible food choices on a conveyor belt in front of their cages. The first choice was an opaque straw with a brown string in it. This was supposed to simulate an inedible twig. The second choice was also an opaque straw, however this one was filled with a large mealworm, meant to simulate a large cryptic prey. The final choice was a small mealworm, 1/2 the size of the large one, presented in a clear straw, meant to simulate conspicuous prey. So predators should prefer prey with higher profitability, which in this case would be the large worm. However, the bird has to make an additional choice about whether to reject twigs or to look for small worms. This allows us to divide birds into 2 categories, specialists and generalists. Specialists focus only on the small conspicuous prey, so they don't have to waste time searching through twigs. However, the specialists don't get the large cryptic prey that the generalists get to eat as well, so it's a trade-off. After doing some algebra, we eventually reached the following conclusions. Firstly, animals should specialize, or in other words, focus only on one meal item, so the small worm or the large worm, only when a specialist does better than a generalist. Secondly, this decision to specialize depends on how much of each type of food the bird can find. Looking at the data, we find that when twigs are abundant, birds focus most of their energy on eating the small conspicuous prey. This makes sense. Birds don't want to waste their time looking through twigs to find food. However, when the large prey are abundant, the birds tend to focus on eating the large prey. The birds are willing to risk finding twigs so long as they can find the big juicy worms to feast upon. Thus, whether the bird is a specialist or a generalist depends almost entirely on how much large prey there is. In other words, birds are pretty smart.